and welcome to our program. I'm your host, Nicole Hayles. This evening, we'll be discussing more battleground constituency seats and the new normal as it relates to the spike in COVID-19 and how it would possibly impact the September 3 general election. Joining me in the discussion are political analyst and acting director for institutional research at Northern Caribbean University, Paul Bourne, and we'll also be joined by Jamaica Labour Party candidate for St. Elizabeth Southwestern, who is running against Ewan Stevenson. We'll also hear from the People's National Party candidate for St. James Central, Andre Hilton. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us.
Evening.
And good evening to your listeners.
Pleasure.
Mr. Greene, let's start with you. COVID-19 is one of the biggest issues we are facing in the country. And given the recent spike, how are you ensuring the safety of your supporters during the campaign?
Well, we have reframed how we campaign from very early with the announcement of the election. We recognized that we had to focus a lot on getting our message out virtually. I've always maintained a very strong presence in relation to my social media, my Facebook. I communicate with my constituents quite regularly. So I have, during this campaign, ramped up those measures. So I've ramped up the communication through those social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. I've tried to ensure that we have the messages that will really get out what we have done, because my campaign is really on my track record, the things that I've been able to do over the past 4 years. I think we've had a very successful term, and as such, we campaign on that. But in relation to some of the traditional forms of campaigning, such as house-to-house visits and motorcades and things of that nature, well, we've done a couple of things. One, I've appointed a chief protocol officer to deal with COVID-19 matters. So in fact, I have a member of my management team that, for example, on nomination day, we rolled out a sanitization team. So we rolled out a team of young people mostly who were in special shirts, branded sanitization team, Greenworks sanitization team, and they walked around, they handed out masks, they sanitized people's hands, they checked their temperatures, and they reminded them to social distance even when they were going on the motorcade for nomination day. We looked in the cars, we said to people, listen, you can't have more than 4 persons to a car, try and maintain that. So we have that team on the ground. The Prime Minister was here yesterday and did a short tour of parts of the constituency. And for example, what we did in that drive-through is that we didn't have any stops. We said to people, we didn't mobilize anybody to come with the Prime Minister. We said to people, come out at the side of the road, you can wave and encourage the Prime Minister. We didn't stop and have any gathering or any meeting, but people really still came out, and there was a really strong outpouring of support and love for the Prime Minister. And we think that's because, one, the people of Southwest St. Elizabeth are really appreciative of the term of the Labour Party, both as their local representative, but also they're appreciative of the government and how well the government has managed Jamaica during these 4 years, and especially now in this critical time. So we have realigned our campaign. We're doing new things. One final thing I'll say, for example, what would normally be a house-to-house community walk, I now go into a community with a music truck and I speak to people, tell them that I'm sorry, we can't come into their house, but the MPs in the area, and I speak to them about the plans and the ideas that I have for their communities, for their livelihoods, just as I would do face-to-face. So we've been improvising, and so far, so good.
Paul, still on the issue of COVID and with the increase in the cases, do you believe that the political parties should still be campaigning at this time?
Absolutely not. I think a number of persons are irresponsible, and because of that irresponsible behavior, I would rather political individuals abstain from having campaigns. However, I understand the importance of wanting a campaign, but we need to understand clearly that there are individuals who are not abiding by the protocols. And I am saying to the political directors, political parties, political individuals, refrain from having a number of these. And as Mr. Greene rightfully mentioned, and I understand, a number of it has going to be some new measures, the online platforms, using, as Mr. Greene used in terms of trucks, etc. But I'm saying refrain from having a number of these face-to-face campaigns.
Still on the issue of campaigning, Paul, do you think that is a major factor in deciding who persons will vote for, especially for the undecided voters?
Absolutely not. A number of Jamaicans have already made up their minds in terms of who they are going to vote for. And what do I mean by that? When you speak to persons on the ground, they are saying to you what they are looking on is the record of the person who they will be voting for, what the prime minister or the opposition individual is doing. So it is not so much campaign as in former years. And I presume Mr. Greene will be able to tell us, does he think that the campaign offers him a better platform in actually going forward, or the social media, or the newness of this era or this generation?
Well, you know,
Mr. Greene,
I'll
any
share my
response?
views on it. I think a campaign is important, but remember, a campaign has a number of different components. So, you know, I definitely believe that regardless of whether traditionally you would campaign with large crowds or gathering, that is a no-no now, and we have completely cut out that out of our campaign, right? But I do believe it is important to get the message out. You know, 4 years, even though it flies by quickly, I have found that people's memories can be short, right? And that oftentimes when you make something better, people can quickly shift to the thing that has not yet been made better and not necessarily remember where we're coming from, you know, in terms of projects and things of that nature. So it's always good to find ways to remind people of the work that you have done. And I think, especially our young people, expect a sort of respect in relation to not taking for granted that they will vote for you, not taking for granted that they will support your political party, and they appreciate seeing a candidate who is trying to reach to them and to sell their message to them, to say to them why should they support. And I find, and this goes across from all political parties, I find the younger persons are less wedded to a political party. So they really need to be convinced to vote. And as such, your campaign has to find ways to convince them to go out and vote, or they will, quite frankly, stay home. So those ways don't have to be the traditional campaign. You know, I've always been a big believer in reaching people where they are, and I find a lot of my voters now, especially the younger ones, are on the social media platforms. So I will go into an area now, and somebody will pull up my Instagram page and say, boy, Mr. Greene, this look good, you know? So we have to reach them where they are, but you still have to run a robust campaign. And I would say I am plowing more now into social media, into designing content that gives a campaign feel, that engages, and that really encourages people not to stay home. I think one thing we have to guard against in this election is that because of the COVID-19 challenges and because of what has been happening over the years with voter turnout, we have to really work hard to encourage people to go out and make their voices be heard on who they want to run the country.
Paul, final question on the issue of campaign before we move on. Over the years, political campaigning has always created a momentum leading up to the general election. How should political parties handle the new normal and still remain relevant to their supporters?
Well, the issue is simple. With every era and with every situation, you have to adopt and readopt and re-socialize yourselves in moving forward. The new reality now is we are at a crisis and therefore it must be managed. Now, in order to understand that it must be managed, you need to look at your end. So if your end is to actually reach your people and you must manage, that needs to be placed critically as a part of the campaign. So the new normal now is going to be Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc., versus the old traditional way of seeing persons at their doorstep and going into their homes. Now, what does this mean? It means that political parties now need to look forward as to where we go from here onwards, or is this going to be the standard that we're going to use now to do campaigning in Jamaica and other places?
Mr. Greene, turning to your candidacy, you're running against Mr. Ewan Stevenson for St. Elizabeth Southwestern. What sets you apart from Mr. Stevenson, and why should constituents vote for you and the Jamaica Labour Party?
You know, I've always made it a point of duty not to, in any campaign, to focus on the opponent or the other person who is putting themselves forward for the seat. I tend to try to ensure that I coach all of my campaigns around the work that I have done and the plans that I have for the area. Now, clearly, this campaign is different than when I just ran in 2016, because in 2016 I was a little bit of an unknown quantity. But I did ensure that when I went into the seat, I started from work. I established a foundation. I started to work with our schools so people could actually go out and say they've seen some work, this is what I voted for. For this, I think what definitely gives me a very firm advantage in this race is the work that I have done, the work that the team has been able to pull together. You know, in 4 years, Southwest St. Elizabeth has seen a lot of work around infrastructure such as roads, around water, around health, around education. And, you know, these are things that are tangible that you can touch and feel, and you can actually see a change in the quality of life of a number of our people. With that said, 4 years is still not enough time to completely transform communities or to completely transform a constituency. So I think part of my campaign is to say you have seen the work that I have done thus far, but there is a lot more to be done. The reality, for example, in roads in South St. Elizabeth, we've gone through a long time that our road network was really not maintained. So I have almost in every community roads that are in need of repair. So while we have done a lot and we have done work in every single division, and we can point to that, whether you go down to Treasure Beach or you go into Bethany or you go into Barbary Hall or Mountainside, you go into Slipe, you go into Spring Park, you go into Newtown, you go Prospect, Middle Quarters, Fustic Grove, all of those areas you can see some work that was done on the roads. But we still have places left. We still have Lewistown, we still have Great Bay, we still have Round Hill. You know, all of those places that are left to get work. So part of my campaign is that, listen, one, green works. You've seen the work, but there is more work to be done. So I'm asking the people to allow me, give me the honor and the opportunity to continue on the journey, to continue working in their best interest.
Paul, how much of a difference will this year's election day be? Have the JLP and the PNP done enough to influence the people of Jamaica to go out and vote, even through this COVID-19 pandemic?
I think a number of persons are really scared. So although they are motivated, I think that psychological factor of fear will be critical. And this is where the party leaders, the party organizers must now let persons understand and motivate individuals to go out and vote despite all of that fear. Because we need to be serious. The COVID pandemic is really an issue, and persons are really afraid of this issue, knowing fully well that there is no vaccine at the moment to deal with this matter. So all campaigns need to actually not only motivate the individuals, but let them see the purpose behind them going out to vote. And that is going to be the difference in this election and the winner.
Earlier today, we spoke with the People's National Party candidate for Central St. James, Andre Hilton, who is running against Heroy Clark of the Jamaica Labour Party, who outlined his plans for the constituency.
I believe Central St. James, well, it is the center of the city of Montego Bay. And the city of Montego Bay deserves a much louder and effective voice in Parliament. I believe I bring that voice to Central St. James to represent our people. In addition to that, I also believe that as an MP, you have to be there for your people. You have to be with your people. When they grieve, you have to grieve with them. When they celebrate, you have to celebrate with them. And I find sometimes the Member of Parliament has been found wanted in many of these areas. Yes, we need to fix roads. And when I see the roads being fixed, there's a few that has been fixed, but there's an enormous amount of roads in Central St. James which has never been touched. Yes, some have been fixed, but many need to be fixed. Create things like in these times, water supply, community center, football field, homework centers, police station, a big housing scheme like Cornwall Courts. which has indicated before that they want a police station, over 4,000 homes there, no police stations. We're going to make sure in our manifesto that a police station be established. The areas that have no water, we're going to fix that once and for all, that the people have water in their pipes. It is a shame, especially in the pandemic. We have so many communities in Central St. James where people have to be begging water, carrying water, and sometimes can't even bathe, and we're talking about protecting our people. It is wrong, and this government has failed miserably. We will fix that in Central St. James.
Mr. Hilton further explained his reasons for joining the People's National Party and outlined the plans the party has for Jamaica.
I joined the party because of one reason, because it has sought to uplift the masses of this country, and that mandate has not changed. Last night on my walk in Mount Salem, I talked to a family who had their first child going to university and can't find the fees. And I told them they're in luck. Because after September 3rd, when you elect the People's National Party as your next government, and I, Andre Hilton, as your member of parliament, the PNP has committed through Dr. Phillips that the first in every family that qualifies for university will be paid for in full through their university years. So I would like to make that commitment on behalf of the PNP. The other thing is the PNP will be building 170,000 houses across Jamaica, including Central St. James, my dear constituent. So you'll be on the list where people can get a house. Whether you're a young person under the age of 35 or you're just a low-income person, we're going to make it affordable for you to own your own home. That's what the People's National Party is about, transforming people's lives. So remember, on September 3rd, vote for the People's National Party. Vote for Andre Hilton as your next member of parliament in Central St. James. Put your ex beside the head. I will serve you to the best of my ability.
And it seems that we have lost Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth Southwestern, Mr. Floyd Greene, who spoke with us earlier. Paul, continuing with you, do you think now is the right time to change government, and how much of a challenge will it be if we change government during this COVID-19 pandemic?
The right time to change the government. However, what is certain is that the COVID pandemic has actually placed us in a different position as where we move from here. And a number of persons are saying that what the Prime Minister has done so far, he's deserving of actually continuing. However, that does not mean that Dr. Peter Phillips, if were to become the next Prime Minister, would not have to do like Mr. Olis is doing. However, what we do know is that there's a clear momentum for persons to say, okay, then allow the Prime Minister to continue because he has done a remarkable job in terms of managing the COVID pandemic. Now, what we can look at is, why would the Prime Minister want to call an election no versus when it is actually constitutionally due? And the argument is really clear. It is best that you actually do things now, manage things, than to wait for chaos to occur, chaos to unfold, and try to deal with it in an election period. So I can understand the Prime Minister's wanting to have the election now. However, we need to be careful of ensuring that during this campaign period, we do not increase the COVID rate that we are unable to manage hereafter.
And on that note, we want to thank you so much. Thanks so much to our political analyst, Paul Bourne, and who is also the acting director of institutional research at the Northern Caribbean University. We also had with us Jamaica Labour Party candidate for St. Elizabeth Southwestern, Floyd Greene, and People's National Party candidate for St. James Central, Andre Hilton. Stay tuned to Mello TV for your election coverage. Join us tomorrow evening for live coverage of the national debate from 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., where representatives from both political parties will be debating on social issues. We'll have a panel discussion immediately following the debate to analyze the issues addressed. I'm your host, Nicole Hayles. Thanks for watching.